We have a super chat question. A Muslim apologist. Thank you for your super chat. Did the Pauline epistles influence the Gospels?
This is really a very interesting question, and one which I was just introduced to again because I was reviewing a commentary on one of the Gospels, and there it was suggested that the Gospel according to Mark, in particular, was influenced by Pauline theology. And when in the past, when there's been an argument along these lines, it has usually been in that form, that Paul influenced Mark. Why is that the case? It's because Mark's gospel sets out an attitude towards Judaism, which is remarkably arm's length. That is, that Judaism is treated as if it is not one of the native categories of the people to whom the gospel is addressed. And you can see this, for example, in the gospel according to Mark chapter 7, where there is a dispute involving Jesus and the Pharisees over the issue of whether they wash their hands prior to eating. And in the course of doing that, Mark introduces from verse 3 the explanation that the Pharisees and all the Jews, unless they wash their hands, do not eat, holding on to the tradition of the elders. And from the marketplace, unless they immerse what they've bought, they don't eat. And they keep many other things, the immersion of pots and vessels and bronzes. In other words, there is a understanding that somehow Judaism is a foreign practice, and because Paul's whole orientation was, as he says, towards the Gentiles, it has sometimes been argued that Paul influenced Mark, and Mark presents you with this conception of a gospel essentially for Gentiles. I think that there is, in fact, a shared purpose between Paul and Mark, and indeed other gospels, in attempting to reach those who are not genealogically a part of Israel. That is, those who belong to the Greco-Roman world. And some of those in the Greco-Roman world had already been attracted to Judaism because of its monotheism, which was a unique phenomenon within Greco-Roman experience, because of its emphasis upon ethics. Ultimately, Judaism was held by many in the Hellenistic world to be more compatible with a philosophical point of view, a more rational religion than polytheism. And for them, given it was rational, it could be very difficult indeed to understand why then there should be the practice of male circumcision, which was held to be a not rational, even barbaric practice by Greco-Roman practitioners. So the possibility of a monotheism associated with the scriptures of Israel, which did not involve circumcision, was very attractive and was one reason for which earliest Christianity was able to expand in the way that it did in the lands outside of territorial Israel, and in a period which was not dominated by genealogical Judaism. What I would suggest is that Mark and the other Gospels share with Paul this common ground of Judaism in the diaspora being the place where Christianity could flourish. However, the particular features of Paul's theology are not reflected in Mark any more than they are reflected in the other Gospels. That is, the temple project that I've referred to during our discussion of offering on behalf of the Gentiles in the temple is entirely absent from the Gospels. And it has to be absent because the Gospels were written after the destruction of the temple. Likewise, the conception of justification by means of faith that Paul uses in order to argue his position, not present in Mark, not present in the other Gospels. His conception that at the moment of baptism, a person actually becomes an Israelite. One of his most radical ideas of all is not reflected in any of the Gospels, and indeed never became the mainstream Christian position. One feature of Paul, which I think we need to keep in mind, is that during the period of his life, which is until just before the destruction of the temple, he was a deeply controversial figure and a deeply minority figure. I referred earlier to his battle in Antioch with Peter and James and Barnabas. He left. He was gone. It is, in Christian tradition, it is Peter who is seen as being the bishop of Antioch, certainly not Paul. So Paul is in a minority position until after his death, until after the destruction of the temple, until after this crucial change in the 2nd century, which saw more followers of Jesus coming from the Gentiles than had come from Israel. And then, in the 2nd century, people begin referring to Paul as the apostle, the premier authority. That is a remarkable development, and it could not have occurred in his lifetime. At the time the Gospels were written, he is still a controversy. He was dead, but he was still a controversial and minority figure. So, strangely enough, there is not influence such that we can see within the Gospels.